Well, good evening, folks. Joe Odo with you for another episode of Citizens Alliance for Better Candidates. I'm on the ballot here in South Carolina for Congressional 6th District against a 32-year incumbent. And we are working our tail off with this little thing like this, a podcast. And those of you who've joined me each week, you see I usually try to get some guests, and I'm really honored to have a great guest tonight. Bill Redpath and I go back some 20 years, I know.
I'm sure that's way too conservative, man. I hate to out you like that on age, but
right on.
I'd start guessing at 30, frankly.
I know that back then I would run into Krickenberger doing petitioning, and
Oh my
and I
God.
know you and Jim Lark picked up a lot after we lost that poor gentleman.
Yeah. In fact, it's 20 years now. January 2004 was when Ron passed, and yeah, he was a great
He was a good dude, man.
He was, absolutely.
Yeah, left us too soon. So you're out there again, and you just a glutton for punishment, man. You were visiting states this year, helping tie up the loose ends for the Libertarians to make the ballot this year.
Yes, well, yeah, I'm the National Ballot Access Coordinator for the Libertarian Party, and obviously presidential election years are busier than the others. And I'm not an armchair warrior when it comes to this sort of thing, and I'm retired. I used to do business valuation work in media and telecommunications, but I retired from that in 2023, and so I had the availability to go on the road and do petitioning, and I spent more than half the time on the road from May to September. And went to Rhode Island, went to Kentucky, went to Tennessee, went to Minnesota, went to New Mexico. I live in Illinois, did petitioning in Illinois. So, I hit the circuit this year in a big way, actually gathering signatures myself.
So feet on the ground, man. That means you have a good insight as to how much harder it's gotten. I mean, haven't they tightened up the controls and made the efforts even that much more challenging over the years?
Well, it's interesting. It's easier now to get on the ballot generally for president of the United States than it used to be. And so to that, and there are certain things, for instance, when it comes to political party petitions or candidate petitions, there are no more restrictions as to, who can petition where. I mean, yeah, you have to be 18 years old.
That's true. You had to be in the state.
Had to be in the state. I remember in Virginia in 1988, the law was you could only gather signatures. You had to be a Virginia registered voter to circulate, and you could only gather signatures of people who lived in your congressional district.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's the way it was in 1988. And then slowly that got loosened up, and then there was litigation over this. And so now there still are restrictions for who can petition. I believe it's 7 states. I just was on Ballotpedia the other day. I believe 7 states on initiative and referendum petitions still have residency restrictions. You've got to be a resident of that state. And I don't think that's right. But when it comes to candidate petitions, when it comes to party petitions, any U.S. citizen over the age of 18 can go anywhere to petition.
Good. That's better. I know years back, Paul Jacob and other folks, I mean, you guys led the way. Paul got arrested for doing that in Oklahoma or somewhere.
Oh, yeah. No, Paul went through a tough time with Oklahoma, and they finally dropped the charges. But again, this one, there are various supposedly sophisticated reasons but to restrict who can petition, but it all comes down to power. It all comes down to trying to restrict people from participating in the initiative and referendum process, or having more initiatives and referenda on the ballot.
Well, we're definitely lucky to have parties like yours to be out there on the forefront of that, leading with some of the litigation too. Even you're national. You were national chair of the party at one point, weren't you?
At one point, 2006 to 2010. Yeah, but there's been a lot of litigation, and I want to give a shout out to Richard Winger. I am now editing. He's been the driving force behind so much of this. not just in terms of litigation, but in terms of lobbying. A lot has occurred that's been good in terms of lobbying state legislatures to get them to lower ballot access barriers. We've got a very difficult situation here in Illinois. And I want to, while I'm thinking of it, there was a great article in the Chicago Tribune 3 days ago on Sunday, October 13, a man by the name of Joe Maher, M-A-H-R, in the Chicago Tribune had a long piece on what it's like to try to make the ballot in Illinois. And they put up all sorts of barriers and make it so difficult to make the ballot here in Illinois. And I absolutely, anybody watching this, please go read this article. It's a long article. It's going to take you a few minutes, but it just gives you an idea of what people in Illinois have to deal with to try to make the ballot. This year, for instance, and 2 years ago in 2022, 0 third-party and independent candidates on the ballot for the Illinois House, 0 independent or third-party candidates on the ballot for Illinois Senate. And then
That's state house?
Yeah, state house, 0. I mean,
my God, that's terrible.
It is. It's a situation, and they've tightened things recently to make it even worse. They've reduced the petitioning period from 90 days to 60 days without lowering the number of signatures, and they stopped something called slating, which allowed political parties, established political parties in Illinois, which unfortunately the Libertarian Party has never been. But it used to be that if nobody ran in a primary for a certain office, that after the primary, the party could then nominate someone, select someone to run for that office. Well, they've cut that out in Illinois.
Wow.
Starting after this year, you can't do that anymore. So I'm telling you,
man, I thought we were bad here in South Carolina with only 50% unchallenged.
Oh yeah, no, it's a really bad situation. I'm telling you, I mean, the Democratic Party of Illinois is doing everything it can to stamp out competition at the ballot box in this state, and they've been pretty darn successful at it. And most of it all has stood up in court, unfortunately. But it's a state where we need to work harder on lobbying, because it has. I mean, it's worked in some places, and Oklahoma comes to mind. Oklahoma had horrible ballot access laws, and there were 3 presidential elections running. I want to say 2000, 2004. Yeah, I think it was 2000, 2004, and 2008. Oklahoma was the only state in all 3 elections that had only 2 presidential candidates on the ballot. But through lobbying, the state legislature during the 2010s, the ballot access laws were liberalized in Oklahoma. And if it can happen there, I think it can happen anywhere. But it's going to be
that is a good test case, because that was one of the worst in the country. And absolutely, and good that you brought up Richard Winger, because anybody that has any questions about this, that's your go-to source right there, man. Ballot Access News. Subscribe to that, because you get really good information from that every month. So
Ballot Access News, and also our online presence is ballot-access.org. Again, I put the hyphen between ballot and access, but ballot-access.org. And Richard and I are blogging there pretty much every day.
Good. Well, and you're right about the big party blocking participation. I mean, obviously your party suffers it, but so do the Greens and any others that want to contribute. Kennedy, you got run out of town, So it's just tragic that those claiming to be for democracy, and this is how they act. Let's knock people off the ballot. We don't want competition. It's tragic. How are we going to get over that in the long run there, Bill?
Well, it's how to do it through litigation, through lobbying, and also through initiatives and referenda. That would be possible as well in certain states. So
we're not allowed in this state.
Yeah, I know. And neither, Illinois, not for statutes, but it is, it's possible to amend the Constitution of Illinois that way, but it is extremely difficult. I think the last time that occurred was in 1980, I think.
Wow.
I'm not sure about that, but I do know it's really damn difficult to do that through well,
like I said, we're lucky that your party just keeps on coming, man. And it's amazing they haven't come for you guys more. I mean, you've had your own internal struggles with the party itself. I met Angela at Austin at the Independent United conference a couple years ago, and even though she'll claim herself to be an anarchist, really what that means is she believes in absolute decentralization, right? I mean, that's where you guys stand, isn't it?
I think I think that statement is correct.
All right. And so you know her. And so tell me about the internal struggles going on, because the Greens had the same stuff. And that's why me and Carrie had to form a separate Green organization in Virginia.
Right.
How's things, is this conquer and divide strategy that the bigs are doing to us, or what do you think?
I don't know. I think that there are just internal disagreements about how to move forward with the party, and
Yeah.
I think that I don't know. Some of it is the effect of. I really think some of it's the effect of Donald Trump on American politics, just generally.
Yeah,
I mean, it goes
exactly.
beyond the Republican Party,
Right.
and I just think that a lot of people. There's just a lot of people
They
behave
go for,
differently these days,
they,
behave differently than what used to be the case in politics. And you're right. There's a internal division within the Libertarian Party right now that is probably serious, and either the first or probably the second most serious split within the Libertarian Party over its entire history. And we'll see how this plays out. I still want to be a part of the Libertarian Party. But there are things that I am willing to do, and there are things that I'm not willing to do to that end. And I just try to be try to keep the ship upright right now as we're sailing through somewhat stormy seas.
Well, you have a really good, well-spoken candidate this year. Chase Oliver came to Columbia for us on our January instant runoff voting rally and gave a speech about, talking about, the spoiler effect. It's those parties spoiling it for us. Tell me more about that in general, your thoughts on that.
Well, he's a big advocate. I agree. I do think Chase is a good candidate. I voted for him at the national convention. There are people within the party who don't think he's a good candidate, and I really don't fully understand that.
Right.
But he certainly is an advocate for ranked choice voting. He's been speaking about that a lot on the campaign trail. He's absolutely right about that. Um, and it's something that it's a first step. I don't think ranked choice voting would make minor party candidates electable, but it would do two big things. It would, first of all, do away with the wasted vote syndrome that is
Exactly.
perceived by people out there. And it would also, and because of that, I think it would mean fewer debate exclusions and more earned media. And so
Yeah.
I think it would make a big difference, even if libertarians and Greens and constitutions and working family candidates and even if we didn't get elected through ranked choice voting, I think we could really change the system. I think it would also, I think what we really need is some form of proportional representation in the United States for minor party candidates to truly become electable on a reasonably widespread basis.
Yeah, good points. And there's a new film out called Majority Rules that is covering the progress that the instant runoff or ranked choice voting is making. It's
Mhm.
back on the ballot in Alaska because Sarah Palin thought it was weird. They're
Well,
trying to repeal it now.
the
So
thing is that now you're right. But they're also trying. I mean, ranked choice voting right now in a lot of instances, like in Alaska, is used as a part of the I'll call it the blanket primary system. It's not. It's incorrect to call it an open primary because that's something
right,
else.
it's the top four that move on in Alaska.
Right, it's the top four that move
Right,
on, and ranked choice voting doesn't have to work that way.
right, exactly.
You could have the standard primary system, and then go to the general. Candidates would have their nominees in the general and use ranked choice voting there.
Right.
So there are people who like the top four system, top five system, and there are people who don't. I will say it is certainly a far sight better than top two. I mean, top two,
Yeah, exactly.
wherever that's been used, it is
It's definitely exclusionary too.
oh, for sure. So
Yeah.
I think that top four or top five is certainly better than top two. And now
Yeah.
I think they're considering. I think there's a top two initiative in South Dakota, and I would certainly urge the defeat of that in particular. I don't think that's good. And you have too many situations in California where you've got two Democrats then running against each other in a general election, and I don't think that's right.
Now, your party has a pretty long history, and you've had some candidates. Maybe the folks who aren't happy with Chase were fully expecting maybe someone with higher stature, like your former governor Johnson, who ran for you before. Do you
Well,
think
yeah,
that was a
maybe,
boost for you in general? What do you think?
yeah, I maybe that's the situation with some people. That's not my perception of the objections to Chase Oliver from
Right.
some people in the Libertarian Party. But it would, yes, it would be nice to have a high profile candidate, Gary Johnson or Justin Amash. Justin Amash.
Yeah.
I was really stunned when I think it was in May of 2020, Justin Amash was going to seek the nomination, but then decided, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks before the convention that he was not going to seek the nomination. And I was crestfallen when I heard that. But that's
Well, the legacy of Johnson is huge because, I mean, here's a cat that was laughed at for his cannabis promotion, and yet now half the states have it decriminalized. I mean,
yeah,
he
I
was
mean,
ahead of his time.
really, and him getting 3 and a fraction, I forget the exact fraction, but Joe Jorgensen as well. Joe Jorgensen had the second highest behind the 2016 vote percentage.
That's
And I mean,
great.
it's really rather impressive. I mean, if you took all of the other, I think if you of course take the major party older party candidates out, if you look at the 2020 election results, Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, the Libertarian Party ticket, if you took all of the other presidential candidates across the 50 states and DC and added up their vote totals, summed their vote totals, you'd have to multiply. I think the multiplier was 1.77, I believe.
Wow, that's great.
You have to take all of their votes combined, multiply by 1.77 to get the number of votes that Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen got on the LP presidential ticket. And, that's rather impressive, I think, actually.
It is, yeah.
And,
exactly.
And that's something that, really, I mean, that you got to hand it to them to be able to do that and get the second highest vote percentage for
especially in the last few cycles, where the cycle of the top two has just been a race to the bottom, with the dialogue being so, I'm a victim, they want to prosecute me, and this, like you mentioned, the ex-president, man, he's basically, Frank Bruni calls him grudge made flesh, grievance made president. That's just,
it's it has not been an uplifting presidential
no.
campaign this year, to put it mildly. And,
right.
I do wish that Biden had lived up to his promise to be a one-term president. I do believe he said that at one point, and he decided.
Yeah, he was a transactional president.
I think that transitional president, I guess.
Yeah.
And if he had decided to step aside sometime in 2023, effective 1/1/2025, and allowed there to be a primary process within the Democratic Party, I think we as a nation would be better off than we are now.
Many still believe that primary process is pretty broken too, figuring that only about 8% of the people end up choosing who the nominees are in general.
No, I hear you. It is, but I think that it
still would have been better than just selection, right?
Right. It would have been better than the coronation that occurred, I think.
Right. But in a way, if that was a smart move, I think, on their part. Maybe the other side should have done that. Maybe once this guy, the ex-president, got convicted, maybe they should have saw the light and said, enough of this, let's move on from this, and done something similar, man. They missed their opportunity, I think.
Well, the opportunity was probably missed when the Senate refused to convict him. That would have taken care
Yeah,
of
that's true. Yeah,
Donald Trump situation. But
right.
he won. He certainly won he won the primaries this year in the Republican Party, fair and square. It certainly appears.
Well, with so few participants and him not even showing up to the debates, I mean,
Yeah. Well.
that's a good way to win.
Yeah.
That's a shame. The media, of course, they emphasize problems and conflicts and never really seek for a solution. And what do you think in general the media is moving towards social media now? People don't really trust the media anymore. I mean, how do you think all that's playing out?
Well, I think that I think that they need to pay. This is a long-standing comment. They need to pay more attention to the substance and less
Yeah.
attention to the horse race nature of this and
Right.
the frivolity and things of that nature. I just particularly I see it here in Illinois, frankly, that for instance, when the election bill, the omnibus election bill passed, that really put the hurt on minor parties and independent candidates. I mean, it wasn't in the press at all that I know of. Maybe it was somewhere. I certainly don't see all the newspapers in Illinois or on news websites. But I just think there needs to be more attention paid to the substance and candidates' feet, figuratively speaking, held to the fire here. And we,
From what I heard about that bill, it was started out as a whole completely different bill, and
yeah,
then
it had,
at the very
right.
end they stuck that stuff in.
Yeah, it was titled something about colitis or Crohn's disease
Right.
or something,
Right.
and they stripped everything out, is my understanding, and then made
Right.
an election bill. It
Yeah.
was I don't know. I'm certainly not privy to the
Right.
Springfield machinations that go on, but again, it was something that just is meant to reduce voters' choice of candidates in Illinois, pure and simple.
Well, how do you see any? Give us some glimmer of hope. What I see out of people having dialogue, like through the Braver Angels, for instance, is bringing people together in workshops from opposite ends of the spectrum to talk to each other. And then you got people like the StoryCorps, the individuals. Are you on the opposite ends of the spectrum? Let's introduce you to someone and get to know them, because we might find, Bill, that we agree on 2 out of 10 things. But let's talk and start there as a basis of dialogue, right? I mean, isn't that a logical way forward?
Yeah, no, I agree, and that is particularly effective on certain issues, and then of course in initiative and referendum situations where you can work together. And I will say this much: I mean, I once read the Green Party platform. This was years ago, and I went through the whole thing. I think it's quite a bit longer actually than it was at the time. Now it's longer, but I went through and I put a plus next to everything that I agreed with and a minus next to everything that I disagreed with. And I then had asked a friend who comes to libertarianism from the conservative side, okay, and definitely conservative on economics. And I wrote down on a piece. I went into another room actually you couldn't see me write something down. There were 3 of us, and I walked into the other room with somebody, and I wrote down 1/3 to 40% on a piece of paper and put it in my pocket. And I went in and I said, okay, Jim, I said, how much, you've read the Green Party platform? You said, yes. I said, how much of it did you agree with? And he says, oh, about 35 to 40%. And I pulled out the piece of paper that said 1/3 to 40%. And,
exactly.
and so I would say, but that means that there is a non-trivial amount of the platform that libertarians and Greens agree with.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of room, a lot of opportunity to work together on those issues. And again, particularly in initiative and referendum situations.
And that translates into what's going on on the Hill. I mean, the fact that they can't balance a budget, that they keep having these continuing resolutions, is because they just won't put a conference committee together and say, let's get it done. I mean, they're so not serious, and the gerrymandering has hurt that cause in the
Oh,
long big picture.
oh well, here in Illinois, I mean, maybe it's worse somewhere, but Illinois is among the worst states when it comes to gerrymandering. It is utterly
Yeah, I
ridiculous.
saw some of those crooked lines there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. They have strung out congressional districts. I
Right.
believe there's only, in fact, technically in terms of land, I think there are 0 congressional districts in Illinois that are solely within Cook County. One of them had all of the population, but they included a little bit of strip of land in DuPage County in that congressional district. But now they have these districts, congressional districts, snaking out from the city of Chicago and Cook County into the suburbs. And they've done this. I mean, we've got right now, we're at 17, I believe. Yes, 17 U.S. House districts in this state. I think 14 Democrats and 3 Republicans. So they have really worked to pack Republicans in as few districts as possible. I mean, the Republican Party is relatively small here, but only 3/17 of voters.
Yeah, and we're the opposite here in South Carolina, but that points to exactly what's wrong with Congress, because those guys, they only have the primary to worry about, and if they win that, they don't have to compromise. They can't buck their party, otherwise they'll get primaried, right?
We
So
we need multi-member congressional districts. Now, of course, you
right,
can't have it in places like North Dakota and Vermont and Wyoming that
right,
only have one, but you could use ranked choice voting for the single winner seats there. But in fact, there's the bill, the Fair Representation Act,
yeah,
that has been put into Congress now for several terms. Don Beyer, congressman from Virginia, Jamie Raskin from Maryland is a co-sponsor. Unfortunately, as far as I know, they're all Democrats who
yeah,
are
yeah,
behind this bill. But that would, to be able to have a multi-member congressional districts across the nation, that would totally change things, because now there would be people would have to stand up and say what they're for. Okay,
exactly.
have to go out there, and I think it would have a tremendous effect in terms of bringing actual policy substance back to our elections. I mean, instead now, people are just running, I'm not the other guy, I'm not the other woman.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much it.
And
And
it's a shame. You bring up Don Beyer. He has an opportunity to really advertise what he's working on, some good things he's working on. But I don't know if you heard, but he won't show up at the debates there in Arlington. So I don't know if you heard about the Don bot. So what they're doing, there's 2 independents and a Republican on the ballot against him. They're going to have a forum or a debate without him, and instead of just the empty chair, which we had to do here in my district, they're going to put the AI in for him. So they have a Don bot that's going to answer the questions for him.
okay, well, I mean, that's a shame. I mean, I think that he feels he doesn't have to do it.
Yeah,
It's a
like
shame that
most
he
of them.
won't, but
Yeah.
he definitely has been on the right side of the Fair Representation Act, and I
Yeah.
salute him for that. But I just I hate to see that, because people
Now
just
you've run for a number of positions too, didn't you? Even
eight
run
times.
state.
I've been an 8-time candidate for public office. Yeah, and
That's awesome.
twice in Illinois, 6 times in Virginia. But here in
Nice.
Illinois, I moved here 5 years ago in 2019. I was a U.S. House candidate in the 6th congressional district in 2020,
Way
and
to go, Bill.
and U.S. Senate in 2022. But in 2020, the only way I made the ballot in 2020 was, I mean, normally I would have been looking at 16,000 valid signatures to get on.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, and in Virginia,
People
it's
have no
1,000.
idea how hard that is, man.
In Virginia, it's 1,000, and that's
Yeah,
tough.
exactly.
Getting
Yeah.
1,000 valid signatures. It would have been 16,000, but due to
And then you only
COVID,
had 2 months now to do
no,
it.
well, no, well, but the story is this: It got trimmed to 1,600 because there was litigation filed because of COVID. Okay,
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
litigation
exactly.
filed, and a U.S. District Court judge in Chicago said any office for which the Libertarian Party or Green Party was on the ballot in 2018 or 2016, they're automatically on the ballot in 2020. And for any other office, the petitioning requirement is reduced to 10% of normal. So 16,000 became 1,600.
Wow,
It
yeah.
was still tough, but it was doable, and I made it on the ballot.
Well, good job,
This
Bill.
we have this weird challenge process, which I won't go in, but read the story. Read that
Right.
Chicago Tribune story to read
Yeah, I'll
about
look it up.
the challenge process that you have to go through. I survived the challenge and was on the ballot for U.S. House 6th District, Illinois.
Outstanding, brother. Thank you for keep on doing that. So in our last minute here, tell me, how do we go about recruiting and getting some people, and maybe give a website, so a plug for what you're working on?
Well, the Libertarian Party's website is lp.org, but Ballot Access News is ballot-access.org, and also Ballot Access News. It's 18 to get the newsletter. You can get it electronically. You can get it through U.S. mail. It's $18 a year, $25 total if you want to join the Coalition for Free and Open Elections, which is a conglomerate of minor parties and organizations that want to see more open and fairer ballot access across the United States.
Well, I appreciate you and Richard's work on that. And man, you're a go-to guy for those libertarians. They're lucky to have you. You
Well,
still
thank
in
you.
touch with Jim Lark and those guys?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just talked with Jim Lark the other day, and still yeah, in touch with a lot of people in the party. And I've been a party member now for 40 years.
Wow, that's
I joined in
outstanding.
April 30, 1984. So
Well,
I
maybe
qualify as an old timer now.
well, I really appreciate you coming on, brother. And maybe we'll do this after the election. You can give us a summary of
Okay, that'd be
you
good.
think it went down. So
Okay.
thanks again, Bill.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
This is the Citizens Alliance for Better Candidates, Joe Odo. You can go to my website, bettercandidates.org, to learn more. This video will post in a couple days. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next week.